Hey, one more World Entertainment, and this is the spoiler review for Superman. So, you're being warned now, full spoilers ahead. So, the first spoiler I shall spoil is the Jor-El and Lara message. You've probably heard about this, you might have even seen it. And yes, unfortunately, it is true that their message is telling Kal-El, that he's there to conquer Earth. No, they didn't send him anywhere because the planet was dying. They didn't send him somewhere where he could do good and stuff. No, the first part of the message is basically them telling him that type of thing. You know, you're going to be a great man. You know, we believe in you. We love you. Blah, blah, blah. You're the heart of us. All this. The second part of the message, which I will get into how that comes about because it's stupid, is them saying, but we're sending you to a planet where they're all stupid and weak, and you are going to be able to rule over them with ease. You're to take as many wives as possible, spread the seed of Krypton, infuse people, rule with no mercy, and if anyone questions you or doubts you, destroy them. That's the full message from his parents, his Kryptonian parents. You're like, whoa. So he's been Superman, like out there in the world as Superman for 3 years. He crashed like 30 years or something before that. The message has been corrupted. They haven't been able to see the last part of the part that says Earth is full of idiots, they're weak, they're stupid, conquer them. And all I'm sitting there is thinking, okay, how are they getting this message out? So Lex Luthor, Ultraman, who, yes, is a clone of Superman, and the Engineer and Miss Taskmaster, for some reason, go to the Fortress of Solitude. They obviously get in because you can only get in and find it with the DNA of Superman, but lo and behold, Ultraman, of course, is a clone of Superman. They get in, they destroy half the robots, and the Engineer hacks. By the way, the Engineer is human who's been infused with nanite technology, which makes her the Engineer, that she can basically form and do anything. But she hacks the system and manages to retrieve the full message. And all I'm thinking is, you telling me that in 3 years that Superman has had the Fortress of Solitude, I'm pretty sure they allude to the Fortress of Solitude only came about when he became Superman, which was 3 years prior. The robots and all know the message there, they know it's broken. None of them have ever tried to actually fix and find the full message. But lo and behold, in walks the Engineer and Lex Luthor, and in 2 minutes, they managed to have the entire message. And we're like, Jesus. So if you're thinking the message is going to be hacked and corrupted by Lex to try and make it seem this way, no, that's not the case. That is the actual real message from Jor-El and Lara, is that they sent Kal-El to Earth to rule Earth and to spread his seed around the world in as many women as possible so Krypton can basically live again. It's like, wow. And yes, Jor-El is played by Bradley Cooper. Now, we only see them in a holographic message, and it's not a message that he can interact with or anything. Lex, how does his whole plans fall apart? Well, it's thanks to Eve Taskmaster, who is sending sexy selfies to Jimmy Olsen, except she's purposely sending images of her standing in front of vital information like maps and blueprints and all this type of crap. And you're just like, that is retarded. That truly is retarded. Superman, yes, he cries in this movie. Lex Luthor, yes, he cries in the movie. So much crying and stuff, and it's just like, good Christ, what is going on? Yeah, so you really can't help but ask, like, why are all these characters crying? Not all the time, but it's like, really? Like, did I say Metamorpho cries? I think I said Metamorpho cries. It gets weird with all the crying. The whole plot basically revolves around Lex Luthor is trying to convince the US government basically to give him permission to kill Superman. He wants to try and prove that Superman's a threat, and he wants to get them out of the way so he can start his own world defense made up of Ultraman, the Engineer, and these group. Now, this is where it gets weird. He shows these robot things. Now, they're called the Raptors, if I remember correctly. However, some of them seem to be actually people, and some of them seem to be robots. For instance, when you see Superman, it's in the trailer, when he punches that guy and the teeth come out and for some reason hit the camera. That's like one of the guys that is one of these raptors. If they all showed up at the same time, you have no idea which is people and which aren't. If any of them aren't, they could all be people. And yet Superman's up there with the heat vision just ripping them all a new one. However, we do see them falling to the ground and they seem to be robots. Yet we've also just seen him punch a dude in one of these. It's weird the way it does that. But the war that's this little subplot. You think, is that set to make Superman look bad? No. Lex Luthor has a deal with one of the countries to set up this invasion, that if they get the land, they won't actually own it. Lex will own it and stuff like that. That's it. That's the plot. That's as deep as the plot goes for this. Is Lex Luthor just wants to do this thing to get land for reasons, but it's to convince the world that Superman will intervene, that he can't be trusted, that he's evil, so he can get rid of him, so he can get land and stuff. And it's like, okay, that's it. That is what the plot is. The whole thing with the Justice Gang is that they're already there. They work for Maxwell Lord and stuff like that. They hate the name Justice Gang, but Guy Gardner thinks it's a great name, and that's a running joke that is terrible. Metamorpho gets to join because he thinks the name is cool. Literally, they're walking, they're walking and Hawkgirl says to Metamorpho, hey, like, you did great out there. That was cool what you were able to do and stuff. And then she says to Guy Gardner, hey, maybe he should join the group, like. And he goes, what, this weird-faced thing? Now be a part of the Justice Gang, not on my watch. And Metamorpho turns around and goes, Justice Gang? That's a cool name. He's like, welcome on board. That's the level of humor you're getting here. There's a joke. They did it in at least a China trailer, or maybe it was a Japanese, an Asian trailer. They did it. They showed it. It's horrible. Again, it's that ridiculous juvenile humor that would have worked maybe 6-7 years ago, but now you expect more, and it's like, this is what we're doing. This is what we're wasting time on. It's a slow garage door. So Mr. Terrific is going to help Lois try and find Superman after he's been sent to the parallel dimension, whatever. And he's like, yeah, we'll take my ship. And the joke is him and Lois standing there watching this door raise up very slowly. And then Lois looks at him and looks back at the door, and then Mr. Terrific goes, then they look at each other, look back at the door, and the door's still going up, and it's almost to the top now, and Lois says, like, you've got a literal flying spaceship and you can't afford a faster door. And he's like, I'm working on it. It's like, wow, we literally just wasted about a minute of this movie watching a goddamn door open. That's the type of stuff you're getting in here. The good stuff, the conversation between Pa Kent and Clark, that's a good moment, because it's a moment where Clark has been beaten. Well, I should say Superman has been beaten again. He's sitting back at Smallville on the farm where Lois brought him. By the way, after 3 years, and they've been dating for like 3 months or something, this is the first time she's met Ma and Pa Kent, who, by the way, are just two of the dumbest people. Like, they're really portrayed as like proper morons. But Pa Kent comes out, who, by the way, gets next to no dialogue in this movie. Martha gets loads of dialogue, but Jonathan barely says anything. But he comes out and he sits down, and you've seen the moment in the trailer where Clark kind of puts his hand around Pa Kent, and it's that Superman is basically saying, like, you know, that message from my Kryptonian parents is real. Like, they actually sent me here to conquer this world and stuff like that. And, you know, that's not who I grew up to be and stuff. And then Pa Kent gives him this emotional speech, like, of, you know, your actions define who you are and stuff like that. And he breaks down. Yes, he cries as well, but he's crying for proper reasons. He's like, I've never been more proud of you. And you're waiting for the joke, because every other scene gets hit with a joke in these moments, and you're waiting for it, and it actually doesn't come. What does come is they get interrupted by his mother saying, hey, there's a call for you or something, and he goes in. But stuff like that is weird. The fight with... How does he actually keep losing to Ultraman? Now, the first person you see him fighting is the Hammer of Barivia. Except it's not actually the Hammer of Barivia. It's actually Ultraman in the suit. But he's being controlled like a video game by all these people in LexCorp, while Lex is going, use combination AB, 2C, and all this stuff. And it's all high. And you're like, what? And it's apparently that for the past 3 years, Lex Luthor has studied Superman's movements in fights, so knows exactly how to beat him. And it's like, that makes no sense. Surely Superman would just adapt to the situation he's in, but no, he keeps getting his ass kicked. And Ultraman, of course, you'd think because he's a clone of Superman, he could actually beat him that way, and it's like, no, he gets controlled. The red stuff around Superman's eyes when you see him in a lot of the trailer stuff, I was curious as to what that is and where it comes from. And when he's getting basically killed by kryptonite that Metamorpho has to make. By the way, they don't actually name him Metamorpho in this. They call him Mr. Elements. Well, whatever. But it looked like he had those marks around his eyes from that, and that's not where he gets it from. He gets it from his clone, Ultraman, trying to laser into his eyes, which made no sense, but that's where those red marks come from. There's nothing really else to spoil, really, because it's like the plot is so wafer thin. There's nothing to this movie. There really isn't in terms of actual story. It's just kind of, let's just put a ton of action stuff like that in here. It's weird. He beats Lex by basically doing to Lex what Lex did to him, which was turning the media and stuff on him and proving that he's a scumbag. And then he gives this big speech to Lex and saying, like, I'm flawed, I'm as much human as you, blah blah blah, and all this stuff. And I get scared, I do this, I wake up in the morning, I'm not sure what to do. And then Lex gives him this big roaring speech back that then immediately gets undercut by Crypto. And they do if you remember, Loki giving the big speech in Avengers Tower, and then Hulk grabs him and smashes him around and puny god. That moment, they do that, but it's with Crypto grabbing Lex and throwing Lex all around the room. And everyone freaking out, and Superman sitting there going, no, Crypto, like, bad boy, like, let him go, bad boy. That's like, Jesus Christ. That's it, basically. That's really what the spoilers are. The engineer is nothing. Come and went and whatever. Just don't even remember what happened to her, actually. Lex gets arrested and just driven off. Superman brings all the people back from the dimension that we saw get destroyed, or was getting destroyed. So work that one out, which includes, yes, it was true, Lex was putting ex-girlfriends there, as well as the monkeys, and even the monkeys are brought bloody back. Superman does hate social media. He hates seeing negative stuff about him, and the one that drives him nuts is the hashtag super shit. It's like, oh god, why would that even bother Superman? The kaiju is played off as a joke as well, because it's this tiny little thing at the start, and the guy's like, that's not exactly a big distraction. The other guy's like, it'll grow, and sure enough it grows. There's one moment that's in every trailer that when we first saw it said that's very Superman, but the more we saw it was like, okay, I'm getting sick of seeing this scene. But we all had a question about it, and it was the little girl playing when the kaiju comes down and Superman saves her. And of course the question was, does she not notice that thing there or something? That's not explained. She literally is just standing in the middle of the street playing while this thing is wreaking havoc. She's also not the only one, because as this thing's running around destroying stuff, everybody is just standing there in the street looking at it. Nobody's running for their lives. They're all just standing there staring at this thing. As for any destruction with Metropolis, that happens at the end when the rift comes through. And for people who complained about Zack Snyder destroying Metropolis, they do the same thing, only differently in this. In this one, every time Superman was hitting the kaiju that was falling towards buildings, he was stopping it. He'd fly to the other side, grab it, and stop it hitting into the buildings to try and stop buildings being destroyed. By the way, he doesn't want to kill this thing. He wants to take it somewhere where they can analyze it and stuff. But Mr. Terrific and the rest of the Justice Gang kill the thing. But the incursion that's happening off this parallel realm, there's this big rift, and that's where the buildings collapse. And that's where we see that in the trailer, where Superman stops the building from crushing the car. That's that scene. The cities are falling apart. But it even starts destroying another city. So there's mass destruction of this city. And you're like, oh, so the one element that people really complained about in Man of Steel, they've just done the same thing, only that it wasn't done from metahumans, but it is done by Lex Luthor of all things. And then we see one of the buildings repaired, but it was a building that was torn apart, not all the rubble ones. It was like, weird. Overall, again, it's not a terrible movie, in my opinion anyway. For me, it wasn't terrible. It definitely wasn't great either. You could see there is a good Superman in there somewhere. It's just, there's too much going on, and that was the big problem. So, again, if you've seen it, let us know what you think about it, all that stuff. Like, share, subscribe, and all that good stuff. Cheers, and I shall catch you in the next one.